Welcome to Talking Tactics, a show about insights and the results they ignite. I'm Sophania Stevenson, a brand strategist and cultural analyst in the wonderful world of marketing. And every other week, I dig into the aha moments that changed everything for a higher education marketer. Each episode of Talking Tactics starts with an insight, following it from observation to action that created measurable results. We're talking about the breakthrough moments that happen with scrappy resources, and sometimes we'll even explore the tactics that, crashed and burned, because there's also value in trial and error. Your next innovative idea might be hiding in your data, your hallway conversations, or your own gut instinct. So let's get to it. All right, welcome back to another episode of Talking Tactics, and today is about how doing too much actually might be hurting student engagement with your university's events and programming. So in the studio today, I have Toni Marie Perilli. She is the marketing and communications specialist at Fordham University. Hey.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So before we even start, I do feel like I have to address that Fordham is having its day in the sun. You guys are getting so much attention in the higher ed sphere with your marketing, your activation. You guys are burning it up over there.
Yeah, it has been such a crazy year to be working in marketing at Fordham, and I will be very transparent. I do not work on the central marketing team. I work specifically in the career center, but I do get to collaborate a lot with my peers in central marketing, and we do monthly community of practice calls. We do so much, but the last year, I really feel like we have been fast-tracked into okay, here's all this really amazing, great, crazy stuff we're going to do, but it's going to be a little bit of a crazy time getting there, so let's go.
And we love crazy around here. We love wild. And obviously the risks are paying off. But I just remember across LinkedIn and some of my higher ed media that I follow is Fordham this, Fordham that, pizza, graduation, cool activations. I was what's in the water? I need some. But today I know our big focus is talking about programming, events, scheduling, email. And what we're starting out with actually today is talking about this concept that you mentioned, a problem you all identified is this idea of over programming and how that plays a role in decreased student engagement, right? There's almost too much of a good thing. So kind of level set with us about the issue you all saw with over programming.
Yeah, so I think the best way for me to explain it is just stepping back for a little bit of context as to how my department works, because I know a lot of people in higher ed don't necessarily have a dedicated career center communications person, or their role might be split with other responsibilities, or it just looks different at every institution. I get that. So my team, we're split across two different campuses. We have a Rose Hill campus in the Bronx and a Lincoln Center campus in Midtown Manhattan, right next to Lincoln Center. And then across those two campuses, we have a student engagement team who's really focused on professional development workshops, panels, career counseling, all that good stuff. We have an employer relations team who is entirely centric on bringing employers into campus. So they are doing tons and tons of outreach. They're planning career fairs. They're doing info sessions. They're coordinating coffee chats, all this stuff to get employers on campus to hire Fordham students. And then we kind of have a third other team. We're not exactly sure what to call it right now because it's kind of grown over the last few years. Yeah. And it's in this middle growth period. The ER team does their own thing. The student engagement team does their thing. And there are opportunities where we cross over. So our kickoff events, we cross over. Our career fairs, we cross over a lot. But on the day-to-day, when we're planning a one-off workshop for students or an employer info session, the employer info sessions in particular get scheduled very, very quickly because employers are just hey, can I come to campus in 3 weeks? Here's the only day and time I have available. Can you make this work? And so totally get it. They're very busy people and they have a lot of different institutions they have to get to. But then the student engagement team is working with a student club, let's say. And it's the Italian club is hey, we want to do a language panel. Can you work with us on that?
Right.
And so they're kind of getting developed at the same time, but totally separately. And we do have all team meetings. We do communicate, but sometimes they're getting developed so fast that we have these programs developed and then we come together at the end and it's wait, what do you mean that we have 3 events in the same week, all targeting the same group of students? Like, it just that's how it happened.
Yeah.
So when I first got into my role, this was kind of a huge problem because a lot of the marketing was very siloed and segmented, that people would be picking up like bits and pieces of it along the way. And then I was like, well, wait, like, why am I making 3 separate flyers when we're trying to reach one
Mm.
audience of students? Why are we sending 5 or 6 emails a day to students? Like, this is
Ooh,
a
5 to
lot.
6.
It was a rare occurrence, but it
Yeah.
did happen a couple times, and it's just like, this is a lot, and if I were a student, I would be so overwhelmed right now, because the other thing too is career services CRM technology is generally not the most advanced, so we have to have separate email clients, which don't necessarily connect to Banner the same way that Handshake does, and there's a lot of different technical moving pieces that essentially resulted in we were blasting out content, bulk sending out content, and it was just so much messaging.
And I imagine some of it isn't even, like, relevant to certain students, or even, I
Yes.
guess, since also, like, you have the challenge of having 2 separate campuses. So does a student from this campus participate? Are you gonna drive across town to go to this one? And like, "This doesn't even pertain to my campus. Why are you sending me this?"
Yeah, and we do have a lot of students, I will say, that do go between both campuses. Like, they
Yeah.
have classes on both campuses. We had one student worker who worked at the Lincoln Center campus but took classes at Rose Hill. So
Yeah.
there are different dynamics. But if you're a Lincoln Center student and you know you have classes on Thursdays and you're getting emails for a program at Rose Hill on Thursdays, that's not necessarily relevant to you. And I will be transparent, we still haven't figured that one out quite yet. The technology is just not there yet. But one of the bigger problems is we have a signature partner program, which is awesome. We love our signature partners. They're great. They tend to lean more heavily into the accounting, finance, and business industries because those are the industries with heavy recruiting presences.
Yeah.
We have a separate business school. They're great students. They are very, very eager to come to our programs. We also have a liberal arts college, and there's a lot of humanities students there who are very active and very eager to get involved with us. But they often felt that our programming wasn't designed for them because part of the signature partner program is their logos are everywhere on our stuff because they're paying additional money for sponsorships.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then you see all these accounting firms, all these different flyers and programs, and then you feel like we're just a business career office.
What does this banking thing have to do with me? And then
Yeah.
it's almost like you condition the students where when you're sending out multiple emails a day that don't pertain to me, as a student, you learn really early, these emails aren't for me. Like, I'm opting out or I'm
Yes.
not opening. So it's like you've created this condition where they're not even inclined to open the email.
Exactly. And we do a lot of programming for our humanities students, and
Mhm.
we've increased it substantially over the years. But it's not that it didn't exist. It was just the perception of it, that
Mhm.
it was the assumption that because I'm getting so much that isn't just for me,
Yeah.
that what is actually for me is very little. So that was one of the big hurdles we had to overcome, is that, we do so much, but how do we make sure we're getting the right programs to the right students? Because
Yeah.
even if we send out a list of every event that's going on the week, what student's going to have time to go through and read through 20, 30 events that are happening in one week? And then the
Right.
events that are happening Thursday, Friday at the bottom of the list, nobody's getting that far.
Yeah. So and email again, my predecessor of talking tactics is like the queen of email, right? Like, Day is
Yes.
all about email, and so much of what we expect out of email now is personalization. So,
Mhm.
as we were like prepping for this episode, one thing that you talked about is like, just from technology alone, you all have kind of like an email platform that doesn't really support personalization, but you all have really leaned into curation. So I'm curious of how you all decide, if we can't do personalization because of, tech things, how do you decide what not to send? Because,
Yeah.
you've got students on this campus, students on that campus, you've got the business school leaning things, you have liberal arts leaning things, but you don't want to leave anyone out, but you also don't want to give everyone everything at once. Again, doing too much, but yet still not doing enough. So how do you decide what not to send?
Yeah. So that was really the big question for us, is how do we figure out how to essentially group and cluster things?
Mhm.
Because we just wanted to make sure that students were getting the right information. And we recognize that with our current technology setup, we were never going to get it perfect
Yeah.
because you have students who are majoring in things who change career paths 100%
Hmm.
after they, declare a major. But we decided to look at major groupings as intent of interest. And
Okay.
part of this was because employers also usually target different major groups for different positions. So
Right.
that was kind of our like key trick in the box that like, okay, we can kind of look into what the employers are recruiting and
Hmm.
help form groups based on that. So
Yeah.
we developed 5 different groups based on major clusters, and we looked at that based on how the different majors interact with each other, how our
Because before
program.
you just had one big list, right? Like it was just a mass and you didn't have any segmentation or groups.
Yeah, and it
Okay.
was just like every student that was a current Fordham student would get these emails. We had a segmentation between undergrad and grad
Right.
students, but
Okay.
still,
Very
there's still a
different.
lot of
Yeah.
different undergraduate students.
Right.
One of the things we did is we made these 5 different clusters. So our first cluster is what I like to call our exploration or our discovery cluster.
Okay.
Those are for our undeclared students. That is also where the faculty and staff who request to sign up for our newsletter will go because they could be interacting with students in any different program. And they can also opt into one of the specific ones. But generally, if you're in the Office of Student Involvement or with international students or counseling and psychological services, you want to kind of get a broad idea of what's going on, not necessarily industry specific. So
Right.
that's that first group. Our second group is like business, finance, accounting, real estate, sports, very much aligned with the business school, but also aligned with these very intense recruiting programs that come in. Because I'm not sure how many people are familiar with accounting recruiting cycles. I was not before I started here, but some of these accounting firms are recruiting like 2 years in advance. So the type of messaging and the
Yeah.
type of flow and resources that those students get is very particular.
Hmm.
So we grouped all of that together because there's a lot of programming for that bucket. Typically, that very extended recruiting process
Yeah.
all kind of
It's for
comes
the long
through.
game.
Yeah, it all kind of meshes together. So that's one group. Our next group was actually a little bit of a light toss for us. So we had a partnership with our STEM and pre health program, which was really, really wonderful. So one of our employer relations managers was managing a second newsletter for STEM and pre health students.
Okay.
And that was really, really awesome, but they were still receiving the regular one and then the STEM one
Yeah.
additionally. So we just blended that all into one newsletter. Every STEM and pre-health student gets this newsletter, and it's still managed in partnership with our partners in STEM and pre-health.
Hmm.
So we put it together every week. They send us content and information on like fellowships, research opportunities, things beyond the scope of what we might traditionally know. And that is still very successful. So that's
Right.
awesome. The next grouping is arts, communications, media students. So, what I like to call our creative path. So,
Mhm.
we have like journalism in here, we have like new media digital design, our performing arts programs, our visual arts programs, really anything that is very creative leaning. And
Mhm.
we get a lot of different culture partnerships. So, we work with museums across the city.
Ooh.
One of our current signature partners is the New York City Ballet.
Put me on that
Yeah.
list, even though I'm all the way in Raleigh, like, add me to that one, I might show up.
Yeah. So we even have marketing students in there, but really people who are just really creative and focused on community experience building and storytelling, because that's a very common thread. But also the way that those internships are structured, these are the students that need portfolios and portfolio advice as well. So that's the fourth
Mhm.
group. Our fifth group, I wanna say it's the leftover, but it's really not leftover, it is still very intentional, it is our
Okay.
humanities student group.
Okay.
So, humanities often feels like a catch-all to a lot of people on the team because it is so diverse, but it
Mhm.
is kind of shares a lot of different traits, and it's really the hallmark of that liberal arts curriculum. And my colleague who feeds a lot of the content for that newsletter oversees our humanities student ambassador program, which
Mm.
is like a really unique program we've launched. So she is definitely the humanities expert there. And those are kind of the 5 different groupings we have. And we essentially, how it works is for all of the different jobs and events we have an RSS feed that connects from Handshake to the newsletter.
Awesome.
And we
I
have
was gonna
like
ask, I was like, how I imagine that would have been a pretty big lift going from one mass email to now creating 5 emails, and you were like, "We were already, stretched pretty thin with development, so the RSS feed must come in a lot." Very, very helpful.
Yes. So I have a Google Doc where it's a list of all of the different tags we have that link up to an RSS feed because we also have some on our website
Okay.
for like featured events and different things. So there's a list that's a guide. So when all of our student engagement and employer relations team members are creating events, they already have to put labels and tags on all the events for data tracking purposes and for general reporting. And so we know how much we did each year and how much of every different kind of thing we did this year. So they're
Hmm.
already used to doing those taggings. I made a list and I was like, okay, if you want this to go in the arts email, it's going to be like email dash AMM or something like that. It's an abbreviation of whatever the name is. So they
Yeah.
just apply that tag to that event and then it goes straight to the email. So we have our student workers go through. I have one student worker who is such a godsend. I could not do any of this without him. He essentially goes through every week, formats it, checks it, makes sure it's all like clean and good and ready to send.
Yeah.
I draft all of the subject lines in advance of the semester. I might edit some of them, with pop culture trends or anything just to keep it relevant. But I draft out all the subject lines, all the additional content at the top of the semester. So then this student worker can just take it and go at it every week and just go through it. And we saw like crazy, crazy growth with all of that.
I was going to ask, like, now that you segment it, you are automating as far as
Mhm.
like those RSS feeds, like based on those segmented lists. What has been the result, and like, what have you seen now that students are getting more of that like pseudo personalized email and kind of like programming experience?
Our email open and click rates are like through the roof, depending on whether you look at it by semester or by year, because that's still one of the things I'm working with our data specialist
Yeah.
to figure out like how we actually want to track some of this. Um, our click rates have either doubled or tripled from what they were before I
Wow.
started in this position. Our email newsletter open rates, they generally start in the mid 80% range. And then obviously it dips a little bit throughout the semester because
Yeah.
students start getting distracted by other things.
80%
So
is so good.
yeah, but
Yeah.
even still, I don't think the open rates in the last 365 days since we've started implementing this process, they have definitely not gone down into the 60s at all. I think the lowest was somewhere in the low to mid 70s, if I want to say. But really, really high open rates, and they stayed more consistent longer. So, typically we would see that really sharp decline a little bit right around like Thanksgiving and Christmas, around spring break, things like that. It stayed a lot flatter longer. It was a little gradual decline, but it was a nice little bunny hill. So I
Yeah.
was really happy about that. But we know that opening click rates don't necessarily translate to actual engagement.
Right.
It has. I have to
Okay.
double check the number, but I believe our unique student engagement rate went up like 20 or 30%, something like that, year over year for the last academic year. So we've definitely seen an uptick in engagement, but we've also seen some of our harder to market programs. So typically things that were for very niche populations, that engagement has gone up as well. And we're still trying to do the data reporting because it's very difficult to track like individual programs because they're not necessarily the same year to year. But we've seen definitely engagement increases in everything. And qualitatively, we've heard a lot more reports from career counselors that students are no longer saying that they feel like there aren't things for them, that the questions that they're coming in with are a lot more, how do I get involved with these things? How do I find these things? And it's not just, oh, I only see programs for accounting and finance students. Do you have anything for me?
That's awesome. And I
It's,
imagine too, that's like another layer that is not even just the overall, it's like the long game for the student experience of you
yes.
mentioning like, hey, if you constantly are having like these premier partners, also like you said, partners who are paying for logos or sponsorship or placement across university, I imagine if they come and they put all this money into these programming and events, they hold it, one student comes, the likelihood of like maintaining that relationship with that partner decreases. So this even helps with like the strength of those partnerships outside of the university.
Absolutely. I haven't seen the full data report for the employer relations team yet, but I know just talking to some of my friends on that team that they were saying that they've been having a lot more students come in. And some of
Mm.
that I will attribute to last year, Fordham came out with this thing called the internship promise.
Okay.
So there's a much broader university wide focus on careers and internships and career readiness. We got moved into a new division this semester. There's just been like a lot of change that's really been putting careers and career ROI at the focus.
Hmm.
But everything we're doing with how we're restructuring, how we even plan our programming, and how we send out the communications about it supports it. So, we're definitely feeling a little stressed because this is just so much new attention and so much new demand, which, we're all really excited about. I know our director is thrilled to death that, all eyes are on us, but it is
Yeah.
still a lot of pressure at the end of the day. So it's definitely taken some of the pressure off of us that it's not like, oh my God, everybody's looking at us and we're just like not communicating with them the way they need to be communicated with.
Right. And it's a good problem to have because, like you said, it's just the growing pain of, hey, we were sending out something that was super ineffective as far as connecting with students and getting them to show up to programming. But now it's the growing pain and discomfort of, whew, people are showing up to these things now. So how do we manage this?
Exactly. Like everybody's like paying attention, everybody's caring. What now?
Right. I guess kind of shifting gears here to your original conversation about over programming. One of the things that you were a really big champion for was centralized program planning. And I'm curious to know what program planning looked like before and like what role does the internal coordination play? Because as you talked about it, it was more like, hey, it's a marketing problem, but it actually sounded like there was even like an underlining piece of like an internal comms and collaboration and transparency and all these things. So what is that central programming planning? What has that done for, the effect on the programming as well?
Yeah. So one of the things I'm definitely a big proponent of is that communications affects every corner of operations. It's not just the external outreach. And so when I had first started in this position, there were separate programming sheets for the different teams. So Rose Hill student engagement had a different planning doc than Lincoln Center student engagement, than employer relations. So, we weren't necessarily seeing what the other teams were doing all of the time because we just weren't all in it. So I really, really pushed that we make one spreadsheet for everybody's events to be on. We can make like different tabs or something. And, at least then everybody can see what everybody's doing. So then maybe there can be some level of cognitive recognition that, okay, like I see that you have a program for theater students the first week of February. Maybe if I want to plan a program for theater students, I don't do it the same day.
Yeah.
And then it
We
reduces the
started to
burden.
cannibalize, like, students both or the theater student wants to go to both, and it would be something that they if it was just simply on another day, they would have
Yeah,
attended both, but because the coordination, they're having to choose, and one program is getting left out just because it's been overlapping.
exactly. And this was actually an issue we came up with this week is that, there were two events for pre-law students on the same day, and they were both being coordinated with different parties of people. So they didn't realize it was on the same day until like a week in advance. But right now, like as I speak right now, they're working on trying to merge the two programs together. And so, part of the problem is you had an event that was designed for like 50 people that now 150 people are coming. But at the end of the day, it's not like, oh, they're going to choose one or the other. And then by blending what they're talking about, the students are getting the messages of both. And it's a much better user experience, much more efficient. But yeah, putting it all on one spreadsheet. The first semester, I will say, looked a little funky. I'm not a coder. Nobody on the team was a coder at that point. But then we had our data specialist start, and he can code his way out of a spreadsheet. So he looked at that and was like, I don't know what you people are doing. This looks terrible. Like there were so many different colors. It was really an eyesore. And he's just like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do it. So he actually did it so well where there's like a homepage tab that's like a dashboard of that live updates of like what's happening today, what's happening this week, what's happening next week. And then he has like another tab for all the stats of like how much we've done so far. So then we can look numerically and be like, okay, wow, we've done 400 programs this year so far. Maybe we should chill out a little bit so we don't do 600 again. So we have all those kinds of stats, and then we can even gauge.
And what's crazy to think is before you did the segmented email list, they were like every student was getting 400, like the notification about 400 different things, just swimming in programming.
Yeah, we do a lot, and that's great because we want to offer a lot to
Yeah.
students. But when you're offering too many of the same things and too much at the same time, it doesn't provide value to anybody. But we have that spreadsheet now, and it works a lot better because we can keep ourselves accountable. But then also, it's not like I have to go email my colleague at the Lincoln Center team to see what he's doing that day. Like,
Mhm.
hey, you mentioned something about this, maybe, kind of, and then wait for him to get back. And he's in back-to-back counseling appointments for the next 4 hours. So I'm not hearing from him. But then my partner over here needs an answer from me in the next 2 hours. And it's even taken a lot of time out of our like all team planning meetings
Mhm.
because instead of us sitting there and trying to read from our documents to just outright report,
Just
here's what's
throw it up.
happening, we can just look at it and point out like the most important things. And it's so much easier.
Yeah.
And so I still think we have a little bit of work to do on consolidating our programs, but that's going to be a long-term game, especially as, our team is looking at how we're doing programming, how we interact with academics and all these other offices. But I feel like for the point we are at now, we're at least working more efficiently as one team. And it's perfect timing because Fordham's trying to be one Fordham. That's our big internal branding movement. So
Mhm.
I feel like we got like a 2-semester jumpstart on that in a way.
So, as we wrap here, if you had to give one piece of advice to an institution sending out these multiple mass emails, 6, 7 emails a day, low open rates, low engagement, low student participation, what's the first structural change that you would suggest they make before they even start to think about, oh, this is a copy or a content issue?
Yeah, I think this goes back to what my mom always used to say to me as a kid that it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
So, yes, the copy or the content might be able to be optimized, that might need to be better. But if we take away the bells and the whistles, what are you actually sending to students?
Mhm.
How are you sending it to them? And it's even things as simple as, are there places that you can consolidate your messages? So if you have multiple events for a certain group of students coming up, does it make sense for that to be one email?
Mhm.
Or should it be, maybe two separate emails? Or even just outright, what events can go together that you can co-promote so you're only asking students to open one email,
Right.
not 5, 6 plus.
Right.
So I think it's really looking at that. And then after that, really looking at who you're sending your messages to. If there's any way that you can divide up how you send them, if there's any partners that you can work with to collaborate on, I think that's the one thing we want to work on much better is that, we have one relationship with the students. Academics has a different relationship with the students. If we're partnering on event, who's the best person for it to come from? And then more of the minor logistics, like, is this email too long? Like we're consolidating things, but is there
Mhm.
now too much in one email? And also, am I sending this at a date and time that makes sense? Friday night's probably not a great time to tell someone about a panel on Monday.
Yeah.
So, really looking at the more operational, logistical pieces to it. And then at the end saying, okay, are we clearly communicating how we want to say this too?
Cool. Well, thank you so much. I had never even considered when you're thinking about the cool next thing to do, like you want, like you said, you want students busy, you want them to feel like they have options, but there is that curation process, the operational side that is super key in making sure that like students actually have the time or awareness to engage. So thank you.
Oh my God, of course. And it's truly like I always tell my coworkers this: the easier it is for us, the easier it is for the students. If we are feeling stressed and panicked and cramped for time, that's probably going to get conveyed to them too. So let's just try to make it as easy as we can for everyone. It's a community. We're trying to make a good experience for everybody. So what's the best way that we can do that?
So you heard it here. Collaborate, curate, consolidate. So keep walking the walk and talking the tactics, folks. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Talking Tactics. If you want to try out the tactics you heard on today's show, you get a full 10 from me, and I would love to hear about how you made them your own. You can find me by searching Safaniya, Safaniya on LinkedIn. You know, there's not many Safaniyas on there, so you'll be able to see me. And if you're enjoying Talking Tactics, please rate and review the show. The overachiever in me needs your feedback, and I'll certainly use it for confirmation or, optimization, depending on the review. And finally, if you just can't get enough great podcasts, the Enrollify Podcast Network delivers with an amazing selection of other marketing and admissions-based podcasts just for you. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com. See you next time.